Hi guys, welcome to the weekly recap. We had a pretty good week. We started out with watching one of Matt's ball games, and he had a really good game. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I managed to score an interview with Matt after the game.
Hey Matt, you had a great game. What's your reaction after the game?
I'm just happy to be here.
Now you're coming down to the stretch of the season. What's your approach to these games?
I'm just taking it a game at a time.
Now, you have a pretty good looking team. Everybody's getting along in the locker room. What do you say about that?
I'm just happy to be here.
What's the outlook for the next game?
We just take it a game at a time.
I'll tell you what, Matt.
Yeah?
Thanks for taking the time to meet with us.
I'm just happy to be here.
Well, thanks a lot, Matt, for taking the time to talk with us and share those insights on playing baseball. Now, not everybody was as excited about watching Matt play as I was. Liz, what's the best part of going to baseball games?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing.
Huh?
Nothing, yeah. I'm always bored.
You're always bored at baseball games, but your brothers are playing.
I don't really care.
Oh, gee. Liz, you're going to get over it. I'll guarantee it. You're going to end up loving it. Now what I want to do is turn to the report that I featured in the thumbnail for this video, and that is a report on what was actually the most notorious crime in the history of Morristown.
How many people do you think have taken a new job and then discovered, like almost immediately, that they made a terrible, terrible mistake? How many of those people do you think resorted to murder to solve that little problem? But that is exactly what happened here in Morristown in May of 1833. There were 4 characters involved in this little drama. Let's start with the victims. The first was Judge Sayers, Samuel Sayers. He was a local farmer, and as you could tell from his title, he was a local judge. Then there was his wife, Sarah. And finally, there was his servant, a woman named Phoebe. They lived on a farm in Morristown, and as you can tell, they were a pretty distinguished family in the town. Then comes a man from France, Antoine LeBlanc. He arrived in New York from France in April of 1833 and was very soon hired by Judge Sayers to do handyman work around Sayers' farm. Now Sayers didn't pay him anything. What he did was he offered him room and board. The room was a dank little thing in the basement, and no salary whatsoever, none. This kind of rankled LeBlanc. There were some rumors long after the fact that can't be checked out now that LeBlanc was actually some kind of a French aristocrat who had spent some time in Germany. Nobody could tell that for sure at the time, and certainly at this distance, we can't verify that. After a few weeks, LeBlanc really got dissatisfied with the fact that he wasn't making any money. He didn't like the work. Thought it was below his dignity. And he decided to solve his little problem in a somewhat dramatic fashion. On the night of May the 11th, LeBlanc went out to a local pub and got himself fairly tanked. He came home about 2 o'clock in the morning and didn't commit a single murder. In fact, what he did was to score a hat trick. He went into the barn and called out to Judge Sayers, asking him to come and give him a hand with some horses. Judge Sayers put on his bathrobe and went down and into the barn, where LeBlanc promptly smashed him in the face. And as a matter of fact, smashed him hard enough that he got Judge Sayers' brains all over his clothes. He then called Mrs. Sayers. She came down and he killed her with an axe. Took both bodies out of the barn and buried them in a pile of manure. He then went in the house and with a club he murdered the maid Phoebe, put her in the manure pile with him. He then plundered the house, jumped on a horse, and took off. Blank was captured pretty quickly. Turned out what happened was he had stuffed the stuff he stole from the Sayers' house into a pillowcase, jumped on his horse, and as he was riding away, stuff dropped out of the pillowcase. A neighbor saw it, followed the trail, and he was captured in Hackettstown. He was brought back here to what's now the Morristown Green, and that was the home of the courthouse and the gallows. It was a brand new gallows, super modern. It worked instead of having a platform that he stood on and they opened a trap door. This one he stood on the ground and they dropped a counterweight, and I ended up jerking him 8 feet in the air. Now his trial, by the way, only was very, very quick. In fact, the jury deliberated for 20 minutes. They had a crowd of something like 10 or 12,000 people around here to watch that execution. It was a pretty big deal for the time and the place.
The victims, Judge Sayer, his wife Sarah, and the servant Phoebe, were buried in the graveyard behind this church, just a few feet from the gallows where LeBlanc met his end. We scoured the graveyard looking for their graves, and unfortunately, weren't able to find them.
Well, yeah, you can't find the bones of the Sayre family or their servant Phoebe, and that's simply, we know where they are, but the stones are just indecipherable. No way you're going to find Antoine LeBlanc. What happened was, after he was hung, they took him down, subjected him to his body to some electrical experiments, made a death mask of his face, skinned him, converted some of the skin into, well, they tanned it and converted it into memorabilia. His bones right now are in a cardboard box in the basement of the Morris Plains police station. So that was the end of Antoine LeBlanc, and that, by the way, was the most notorious crime in the history of Morristown.
Well, luckily, a triple murder has not, as far as I can tell, a triple murder has not been repeated in Morristown, and certainly not since in the month and a half or so that we've been living here. But there you go. There was one of the most exciting things that took place in this town in the 19th century. Earlier in the week, I decided that I would attempt to shoot in a place called the Great Swamp, which is a national wildlife refuge. It's only about 4 miles from our house, but boy, it sucked. And I'll tell you what, here, you check this out and see if you can spot the thousands of mosquitoes that found me. Yeah, not going back there anytime soon for more video. Well, that concludes this week's report. I hope that you'll take advantage of the little subscribe button that's showing up here and check out whatever other video I managed to link to in this final screen. In the meantime, everybody take care. Have a great, great weekend and a great week. We'll see you next week right here, same time. Take care.